It's 2003. A small studio called Volition in Champaign, Illinois are developing an open world game simply called Bling Bling. Little did they realize this would be the stepping stone for the Saints Row franchise, the biggest franchise the studio would create. This was originally supposed to be a PS2 game at the beginning of development. The goal was to make a game with a more organic mission structure that allowed players to approach each objective as they wanted to. They also wanted to encourage players to test and play around with side activities like insurance fraud or drug trafficking, and that is when they came up with the respect system. You had to earn respect from these side activities to even do any of the main story missions. Also, by spending money from side activities and main story missions, you could get respect bonuses that would increase the amount of respect that you would earn at the end of a side activity. One of the big things that they saw that could make or break the game was the city the game takes place in, Stillwater. Stillwater is based on Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and Baltimore, but I always saw a little bit of St. Louis in there too. Even the license plates in the game look like Missouri plates. And they were constantly changing the map so that it felt big enough, but not too big, because then asking people to traverse areas that are huge would turn players away. But there are numerous things like the trailer park and the indoor shopping mall that were cut from the first game, but then added back to the city in the second game. When the game was first released, it was well received, despite the fact I never saw a commercial for this game or any ads in any gaming magazines at the time, and not many people mentioned this game. Despite all of that, it sold 2 million units and became a platinum hit in the early days of the Xbox 360. Some reviewers loved the humor and gameplay, where others thought it pulled the industry down, and also hated the respect system, saying that it, quote, broke up story progression, end quote. And some reviewers told people to just wait for GTA 4, that it would make Saints Row irrelevant. Some places like Game Informer gave it an 8.75, Famitsu gave it a 34 out of 40, and Edge gave it one of the lower scores with a 6 out of 10. Right now the game sits an 81 out of 100 on Metacritic, and I think that's about right. Maybe a little high, but it's about right. In gameplay terms, Saints Row doesn't do anything new, but unlike GTA, instead of relying on lock-on targeting like in GTA 3 or GTA Vice City, looking at third-person shooters and the mechanics of GTA San Andreas where you can bring up a reticle without locking onto an enemy. But in Saints Row, if you have a gun out, the reticle is there. For some people, this made combat easier, but for some people, they hated this, and at the time they thought it was a fad that would be gone in 5 years. Saints Row also added a weapon wheel. Instead of having to cycle through weapons like you did in Grand Theft Auto, you could just press B and then choose the exact weapon that you wanted without having, once again, to cycle through weapons to find the weapon that you want. On top of all of this, Saints Row is one of the first games that I remember having GPS. Maybe not the first, but one of the first. Now I hope I got you to understand, people thought that Saints Row was just another generic GTA clone that would disappear with time. We know that's not what happened. As a matter of fact, the series actually is getting rebooted, oddly enough. And now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, I want to talk about the actual game that is there. So let's just get into that now. It's 2006. Welcome to Stillwater, a city controlled by 3 gangs. First up, the Vice Kings, an African-American gang ran by the OG
Benjamin motherfucking King.
That's a legitimate business, like a record label and brothels all over Stillwater. A few drug deals are made on the side, but that's it. Next, Los Carnales, and there is no the before Los Carnales. Dex will remind you of that. Los Carnales are the gun runners and also control all of the drugs on the streets. Last, the West Side Rollers, the suburban gang of the city. They control all of the street racing in the city, but that can be very profitable if you play your cards right. You show up in a random alley and get involved in a fight between all three of the gangs, and just when you think it's all over, Julius Little, the leader of the new 3rd Street Saints, saves your life, and that is how this misadventure starts. Julius tells you to meet him and his right hand Troy Bradshaw so you can join the gang, and this is where you get canonized. You get to meet the crew that will come along with you for this ride. Saints Row has 3 primary story arcs that go along with the 3 rival gangs in the city. Dexter Jackson is given Los Carnales. Lynn has infiltrated the West Side Rollers to get inside info, and Johnny, probably one of the most recognized NPC characters in the series, is given the OG Vice Kings. This is where the story actually starts. First, let's go with Dex. Dex wants to use strategy to cut off Los Carnales' ways of making money. This leads the Lopez brothers to have problems with their suppliers, and this creates a level of distrust in the family. You see the family fall apart as Angelo has problems with Hector, as Hector's anger is growing, and Manuel the supplier creating even more distrust while picking up Angelo's wife. At the end of all of this, after Hector is killed by the Saints, Angelo tries to run for it and get out of Stillwater while he still can. This doesn't end the way that Angelo imagined it, but it is one way to end the story. It ends on the runway. Now, Los Carnales is gone. The Saints control the guns and drugs around here.
Bullshit, that's last year's fall collection.
Second, let's see what's up with Lynn and the West Side Rollers. Since Lynn is in the Rollers, most of the conversations with Lynn are over the phone or in subtle meetings where you don't even look at her or trying to make it look like she has no idea who you are. Lynn comes up with the idea that you attack a mechanic named Donnie. Apparently Donnie is good friends with the nephew of the leader of the Rollers, Mr. Sharp. And this is a quick way to get access to high up Rollers info. But after a few deals go south for the Rollers, they start to piece together that they may have a rat. They know it can't be Donnie. That's when they set you and Lynn up. Lynn dies and Donnie disappears. This hurts some feelings in the gang, but you survive and chase down Mr. Sharp. So he knows he fucked up in the cowardly way he killed Lynn and tried to kill you. Now it's time to put an end to Mr. Sharp's nephew. That has one last attempt to kill you. A few destroyed cars and a semi is all that's left of the Rollers when you're done. Now, the racing scene belongs to the Saints.
I got ran over by a motherfucking truck. What do you think?
Last, we have Johnny Gat taking on the Vice Kings. Now, Johnny is not the best person to plan an attack, but the plan doesn't really matter when you have Johnny Gat on your side. Now, the Vice Kings have Johnny's girlfriend and the star of the 3rd Street Saints, Aisha. The first task, fake Aisha's death to get her out of her record contract. While we're at it, we can take down a large piece of real estate. Ben King doesn't see the 3rd Street Saints as a real threat, but Warren, Anthony, and Tanya think they'd be easy to knock out. After Anthony kidnaps Johnny, you follow Tanya to where Johnny is being held, knock out Tanya, kill Anthony, and free Johnny. That's only the start of shit going crazy. This leads Warren and Tanya to overthrow King and take control of the Vice Kings, but Julius and Ben King have a history. so you get called in to save him. Tanya turns on Warren to take complete control of the Vice King. Ben King gets cut a deal to help the Saints finish off the Vice Kings and Tanya. After that, King skips town. Now, there's nothing holding the Saints back.
Hope you don't mind hepatitis.
What?
After taking out all of the gangs in the city, you'd think that'd be the end. They even roll the credits on it. But that's not the real ending. After all of the gangs disappear, Julius tells you that you are now his right hand. Julius is immediately arrested after that. Now, you have to do the dirty work of Richard Hughes, an alderman trying to gain more political power. But Hughes doesn't follow up on what he said he would. So the correct response is to kill the mayor of the city during a motorcade. This frees Julius, but sets Hughes up as the next mayor of the city. This is when Hughes invites you on his yacht and tells you that you've played right into his trap card. You also learn that Troy was an undercover cop. Julius watches from the shore as the boat explodes and everyone on board is considered dead. This is an ending that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. But it's not the best way to wrap up a story. But they left the door open for a sequel.
Right to the point.
Yo, can you speed this shit up? I want to go to Freckle Bitches.
This is the game that I played while waiting for GTA 4. And I'll be honest with you, I was disappointed by GTA 4. Especially when you realize that 6 months later, Saints Row 2 came out. And I spent way more time in Stillwater than Liberty City. Saints Row may not have all the graphical fidelity that you would expect from an Xbox 360 game. But remember, it was a PS2 game originally that helps create this kind of bright, colorful world without needing to make it feel ultra realistic, and would help them develop their own style in the future, keeping a lot of the color while smoothing out the edges to make their own look. Once again, not an ultra real look, allowing to keep the cartoon aspect of the game that would eventually overrun the series, leading to a reboot. Next time I talk about Saints Row, we'll be going into my favorite game in the series, and staying in Stillwater and rebuilding everything from the ground up in Saints Row 2. Thank you for watching until the very end. This is my third time trying to record this outro. This time I'm going to make it quick. Maybe one day I'll redo this review. I'll talk more about how the MP3 player worked, some more about the side activities like carjacking and mayhem. I'll talk more about the tags and hidden CDs. And I'll also talk some more about some of the funny stories I have about this game, like how this game actually ruined a relationship that I had with someone. Like, that's actually a really funny story, but maybe one day we'll get into that. Until then, like, comment, subscribe, and maybe one day I'll tell you about the story that basically ended a friendship.
To the point.
Yo, can you speed this shit up? I want to go to Freckle Bitches.